Hello and welcome to another episode of Talksicology, brought to you by Recovery Unplugged. Here at Talksicology, we talk all things addiction, recovery, and mental health. Tonight's guest, U.S. Army veteran Shawn Livingston. I'm your co-host, Jason Cabello, and as always, your host and mine, Joseph Gorordo. Hello, welcome to the show, everybody. Clearly, just me again today. Joseph is out there, and he is celebrating his, I believe it's the 11th year anniversary. I'm not sure, something like that. So it's just me. Welcome, everybody, to, again, another episode of Talksicology, where we talk all things addiction, mental health, and especially recovery. So, there's a lot going on this week, all in the news and stuff that we've been up to here. You know, like I was saying a couple weeks ago, I was absent, and it was because I was in our Nashville facility. And we had a sober sessions out there, which was one of the greatest events I have seen in quite some time. And we have a clip from the sober sessions. If you, Greg, can you run that? It's a clip from our sober sessions, and there is a tech era right now, so we'll skip that. Maybe go to press, radio, and film. We got a lot of stuff in the news to be talking about then.
Press, radio, and film.
All right, so big news in the recovery world, and especially in the Recovery Unplugged world, is dear friend of Recovery Unplugged and board member of Recovery Unplugged, Steven Tyler, has recently relapsed and publicly announced that he had to cancel some shows in Las Vegas to get himself some help. And, you know, of course, it goes without saying that we wish Steven, one thing that I hear in recovery all the time is a slow recovery, and that you know, he takes his time, gets himself better, and then, you know, makes it back to entertaining the world and being a light and a man in recovery. And, you know, I, for one, really respect when somebody who is in the public eye comes out when they relapse. I think it's really important, because I think if you are really vocal and really public about your recovery and things aren't going well, that you owe it to A, yourself, and B, the people that are doing this thing to know that it does happen, that, you know, relapse is a lot of people's part of a lot of people's story, and it's not necessarily a failure if you could you know, if you could brush yourself off and come back to it. But, you know, it's scary these days, because with fentanyl and a lot of things that are out there now that weren't out there when I was heavily using, you know, you don't really get these opportunities. So, Steven, we wish you nothing but the best, and we hope that you come back soon, and we love to see you at another Recovery Unplugged event soon. So, there we go. Steven Tyler, everybody. Let's all wish him well. So, tonight, we have Shawn Livingston, who has a documentary. It is premiering, I guess, on Amazon this week, and it's called 100 Miles to Redemption, and we have an amazing clip from that. If we could roll the clip.
100 miles, you're talking extreme right there.
This race is it's a tough 100. I think there's 16,000 feet of climb.
It sounds so crazy when you think about, oh my gosh, this is like 4 marathons, and you're gonna do it without stopping.
I just want to go back home and look at my family and tell them I did it.
Happy birthday, dear Shawn.
You raise children in a good household and a middle-class family, and I don't think any parent ever says, oh, okay, I'm prepared for my son to be a heroin addict.
We, as a society, tend to view people with substance use disorders as criminals. It's easy to do that until it hits our families.
I always viewed him as a superhero. I never thought he could really do anything wrong.
As normal as it is for anybody to wake up and brush their teeth in the morning, it was that normal for me to wake up and stick a needle into my arm.
You don't know how bad it hurts for me thinking about I have to plan his funeral.
I would go months without hearing from him to find out that he had been in prison.
Here we go again. You know, thought maybe this time would be different.
This running is what he says and admits is saving him. So if it was to go away, it'd be tough.
There ain't no way in hell I'm calling home after this and saying I didn't finish.
His addiction didn't happen overnight. His recovery won't. Our family coming back together won't happen overnight either.
That looks fantastic. So, yeah, let's bring him on. Shawn, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. Thanks again for being on. Whoever did that video is knows what they're doing, man. As a visual storyteller myself, that is some quality work there.
Yeah, he outdid himself.
Yeah. All right, so Shawn, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and let them know a little bit about you.
My name's Shawn Livingston. I've been here in Austin for about the past 5 years. Came to Texas in 2007. I was in the Army, got stationed at Fort Hood, deployed to Iraq, got injured, hurt my back. The military stuck me on painkillers. I got left on the painkillers for about 2.5 years, and they kind of just yanked them off me. And let's not get it twisted. I was a partier anyways.
Right.
So I definitely played my part in the whole thing, but came off the painkillers, and it just had kind of ignited the whole addiction in me, and just didn't stop. Got into heroin, anything else I could get my hands on pretty quickly. Got kicked out of the military. Started getting in a lot of trouble. Went away to prison for 2 years. Got back out. Got in more trouble, and just
got that cycle of things.
Continued down the same path.
So, there's a lot of misconceptions that, most drug addicts come from really troubled homes and have really fucked up childhoods. But I mean, just judging by that short video that we watched, it seems like your family was really tight knit, really supportive, that you had like a good upbringing and a good support system at home. So let's start with that. Let's start. What was your childhood like?
It was, I didn't have any, childhood trauma, nothing like that. My dad left when I was 2, so it was me and my mom for many years. Luckily, when I was around 10 years old or so, my stepdad came into my life, and just an all-around great dude. He, for me to look back now as an adult and look at the job he did, raising me and raising somebody else's child, and especially for all the stuff that I put him through growing up. I couldn't ask for a better stepfather. And just, played sports, had fun. And, I just had a pivotal moment my junior year in high school. I was a basketball player, and was going to a Catholic school that I basically got recruited at to play basketball there, and got into a car accident on my way to school one morning. Kind of ended my basketball career. And so losing, that was my identity growing up, was being a ball player. And once I lost that in my life, then I was kind of left with not knowing who I was. It was a tough time for a kid to try to understand that. And so the next thing was just kind of hang out with the fun people, which ended up being the party crowd. And I took right to it.
So did that become your new identity, the party guy, the
Yeah, yeah,
yeah?
absolutely.
Were you like attention seeking or anything like that?
Definitely. I think, doing all this work I have over the past years, I looked back at the way I dressed, the way I acted, everything, the music I listened to, you name it, was all attention seeking. Um, you know, Back when I was growing up, it was baggy clothes and big bright jerseys and colors and stuff like that. And I think it probably stems from my dad leaving at an early age, and then always trying to jockey for attention from, my mother was. She's got her PhD. She was going to school, so she was tied up
Right.
trying to provide me with a good life. So just trying to jockey for more attention in life. Absolutely.
And I could see if basketball was a positive thing in your life, I'm sure, and you were getting a lot of attention. People were noticing you. You were somebody there, and then that goes away. And then what else do you have to fill it in? But to try to act out a little bit, cause some trouble, numb it with whatever you can. When did you start dabbling? When did you start first maybe doing softer stuff like drinking or smoking weed?
Senior senior year in high school, I'd say the sports kind of kept me straight. Once I didn't have sports in my life and was hanging around the party crowd, I'd started doing the softer stuff. I didn't really get into anything hard until maybe a couple years after high school.
Right.
Uh, that's when I kind of started finding coke and stuff like that. And there was just never anything in me, and I'm sure many of the people listening, there was never that every drug I did or every kind of tier I went up, there was no switch in my head that was like, oh, this is bad, shouldn't be doing this. It was like, oh, that's it. Like that this was all this was built up to be to me for
What
me to
was I
be.
worried about? This is fun.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
let's see how far we could take this.
Yeah, yeah, I get that, man. I was a total late bloomer. Like I would mess around with some stuff, but I mean, I definitely started with like the attention seeking and doing crazy shit, and then yeah, but I wasn't into drugs. My parents were, there was a lot of drugs around when I was growing up, so it was kind of like it's what my parents did. So it didn't have that like shiny allure that it was like, ooh, this is taboo. It was just like, oh, that's what my parents did. Like no big deal. It wasn't until I was 23 where I really got started. So when did you join the military?
I kind of floundered around those couple years out of high school, and tried to go to a semester of college. I think I showed up for maybe a week and then just stopped going. So shortly, maybe a year or two after that, I actually joined the Air Force and went away. I did 6 years in the Air Force and kept it together for the most part with all that. Um, and then I got stationed over in Germany for a year and was under 21 there, so couldn't really go out and experience the parts of Germany I wanted to.
Right.
And so I thought I was homesick. I didn't really have a lot of life experience to compare it to, and so I thought being over in Germany sucked. I thought being in the Air Force sucked, and so I got out and I did my 6 years. I got out and ended up back in my hometown, and everybody was doing the same stuff. People were still partying, and I got right back into it. And when I got back, OxyContin had finally like hit big there. When I left, everybody was doing coke. When I got back, everybody was doing oxy. And
Yeah.
so I got into that, and very quickly that got a hold of me.
Yeah, that doesn't take very long. That's I know we had talked before the show about like the South Florida connection, and that's that what that stuff did to the country is just it's crazy. Like I remember seeing just the neighborhood where my mom lived. It was like working class, a lot of people in the boating industry, people who worked hard but get injured. And then once those things became readily available and doctors were just there to prescribe it, not the most honest doctors in the world, and everybody could get them. And then the real problem was once everybody couldn't get them anymore, and then it was just like all hell broke loose.
Yep.
So about what year was that you started dabbling with the oxys or got hooked on the oxys?
Probably about 2005,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
2004, 2005.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. About the same time where I started really heavily getting into them. And, like yourself, I like to party too. It wasn't like I was, at that time I was kind of a dumpster. I would take whatever, but it was like the first time that I really had, a high milligram one. And I was just like, this is it.
Yep.
I'm gonna feel this way every day for the rest of my life, and I tried. I tried for a lot of fucking years to do that. So,
Right.
was there ever like a point where there was like a fork in the road when you were like, if I could keep doing this, but then this is what I'm gonna be doing. Like, there's not much else gonna be going on if I keep down this road.
I'd say the most pivotal moment would have been years later after that. I had continued after I got out of the army. After I'd done my Air Force time, I had said I'd like floundered for a couple years, got into the army, did 4 years there, and it was not anything for me to anything to brag about. I was basically a junkie the whole time, just kind of skirting by and trying to stay out of trouble as much as I could.
Right.
But I ended up getting kicked out of the army after I got back from Iraq, and really quickly started getting into trouble. Went away and did 2 years in prison, and for some reason, the 2 years in prison didn't phase me. Like, it was almost as if the military had kind of prepared me for it. I was used to being told when to get up, when to go to
Right.
bed. Was used to being in close quarters with nothing but guys. Like, it was just, prison was nothing big. But I got out and I caught 2 more felonies. And that fourth one, they decided they're going to charge me a habitual criminal. And at that moment, when I went in front of the judge, and the sentence I think carried from 10 to 99 years, and he said that I'd already been in trouble. This was my fourth offense. He didn't see any reason to go under 10 years, or he didn't see any reason to go under 20 years. And so 20 years was going to be the sentence. And so I told you before, we had started this. I used to run around in the streets thinking I was this big tough guy, and another man looks you in the face and tells you he's sending you away for 20 years. Like, all the tough guy shit goes right out the window.
Yeah.
And so that was the moment where I was like, I've got to do something.
Right. So was your initial charge that put you in prison for the 2 years, was that drug related?
Yeah, all four of my felonies were possession of heroin.
Oh, okay. How did that first one go down?
Going, I had moved. I was bouncing around in between those. Right as soon as I had gotten out of the army, and was living in Dallas, and I'd drive back and forth to Waco to get my dope every couple days, and just was driving reckless on the way back. Was too high, and got pulled over, and they had it in my sock, and they had me. I didn't even really try to fight it.
Was there a feeling of almost like relief when you got busted? Because then you knew that there was like, I don't know where you were in your addiction at that time.
No,
But
there's definitely
no relief.
no relief at that.
Okay.
No relief at that point. I don't know that I ever felt that relief when getting arrested.
Right.
Because I knew what was coming next, and it was going to be a collect call to my mother, and trying my wheels already turning on some story I could tell her about how I was wrongly accused, or some manipulative way to try to get out of it or whatever.
Yeah, so I mean, let's talk about, because I mean, I remember getting pulled over hundreds of times, and my mom always tells me that I was born with a horseshoe up my ass, just because there's so many times where I was like driving around with so much shit, and just like, and I remember because that's why I asked, because I had that moment one time. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was driving I had bought my mom a little diamond necklace, and then at some point asked if I could have it back so I could go pawn it for dope. And I was driving from my mom's house to the pawn shop, already in so much fucking guilt and shame that I'm doing this, and that my mom actually gave it back to me and didn't make a big deal about it. So I'm driving to the pawn shop, and I got pulled over, and I did not have a license, and I had a warrant down in Miami, and this was in Fort Lauderdale. So I had a warrant down in Miami, and I was just like, this is it. It's over. And the sense of relief kind of came over me. The only thing that worried me was being dope sick, going to jail dope sick. So tell me what that felt like. So for those of you who don't know, if you're doing heroin, and especially if you are supporting this addiction where you have to drive and go pick shit up, you're doing it daily, if not hourly. And this is just to maintain, so you're not getting sick. Because dope sickness is it's just terrible. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. So what was that feeling like when you knew that you were going away and that you weren't going to have access to dope and having to detox in jail?
That right there was like, it's one of the scariest feelings, because as long as I'm out in the free world, there was always that 0.01% hope that I was going to be able to scheme some way to get what I needed. And right then and there is when you know that it's all coming crashing down on you. And so I don't, anytime I got locked up, I would immediately just try to sleep as much as I could, because I knew the next days to follow, there wasn't going to be much sleep on it.
Right.
And just, it's nerve-wracking enough getting locked up and, making it to the back in county and everybody's looking at you, trying to size you up and do all this stuff. And here, you know what I mean? I'm trying not to shit myself as I walk back there.
Yeah. What about when you went to prison? Were you able to get dope there? Were you using when you were in the joint?
No, so they had just kind of instituted safe prison rules, and so that was where in TDC, where they started giving out free world charges, so you could catch more felonies in there and they could extend your sentence. And so any of the units I was on, there was never anything serious stuff like that. Thank God, because if it was there, I would have done it for sure.
Yeah, and that would have you most likely would have still been in if that were the case. Just keep on racking up charges inside and doing what you had to do to maintain that habit. So then when you got out of the initial 2 years, as soon as you got out, are you trying to put a decent life together, or are you going right back to the streets and starting picking up where you left off?
I broke the golden rule and hit up my ex-girlfriend as soon as I got out. And that was a recipe for disaster. So took me right back to the same people doing the same stuff, and within no time I was back in more trouble.
So that's what you did. But before that, was there a thought of like, okay, I got this 2 years, I don't have a habit right now, I could start fresh, clean slate? Were you motivated to start something new, or were you always just ready to hit the ground running to get back to the shit?
No, to be blatantly honest, I had found out I got a good story around all this that I can tie into it. That I'll tell you later once we start talking about we start talking about the film and stuff. But
Gotcha.
No, I had found out that it was pure ego. I had found out that my ex-girlfriend was with a guy that I knew, and so I was gonna get out and prove that I was gonna get her back. And so that's all I was doing. I just wasn't yet in the mindset. I hadn't done any work. I hadn't done anything to heal myself or really address my addiction or anything like that. So it was just the same dumbed down mind doing the same dumb stuff.
Yeah. We just got a really good comment from Peter Gaspar on there. If Greg, you could put that up. Thank you, Jason and Shawn. This discussion brings back a lot of tough memories, but I eventually saw the light at the end of the tunnel. Clean and sober, 32 years. Blessings, everyone. Sergeant Army retired. That's amazing.
Let's go. 32 years.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Peter. We appreciate it. So after that, you hit the ground running again. What are the next couple of years like?
Nothing. I was in, once I had gotten out, I was actually in Austin. And I didn't ever get to see much of Austin because I was held up in my apartment. The only time I was coming out was to, get food or get dope. And
right.
Just started getting arrested multiple times, all for possession, got a DWI and it all. And then it was just kind of biding my time, waiting till my sentencing.
Yeah, and it's so funny because I completely understand that feeling of like just keep on getting into trouble, living in that cycle, but then thinking like, why is my luck so bad? Why are these people always after me? They won't leave me alone. And it's like now looking back to see what I looked like back then and the shit that I was doing. No, well, I was like a fucking. I thought I had my shit together. I thought I looked okay, and I was like, people didn't know what was going on, but that was a fucking mess. I couldn't keep a fucking thing together.
Absolutely.
So there were two younger girls in the video. Are those sisters, stepsisters?
So what
In your
one
in the in,
one
the
was
one who
one
said
was
that
my
you were like a superhero, the one who
yeah,
called you a
that's my sister.
that's your sister. So,
Yeah.
what is your family relationship like during all these times?
So I was gone. They saw my early beginning of my addiction with Oxy and stuff like that. But then I left with the military and I never really went back. So it was a lot of distant. My mom knew things weren't going well when she didn't hear from me for long periods of time, and she would come visit me, or I'd try to go home and hold it together, and she would catch the vibes. She knew
Yeah.
something wasn't right. She tried to believe the best, but it wasn't. And it took me a long time. As the doc, you'll see in the documentary, a lot of the film is me trying to rebuild the relationship with my sister, and
Oh, okay.
I didn't understand it for a long time because I didn't never feel I had done anything directly to hurt her. Like I'd never harmed her, never hit her, never stole from her,
Right, right.
anything like that. And what you end up finding out in the film, and it was really my first glimpse into what the family goes through. You only ever usually think about your recovery, and once you feel that you've gotten better, you're like, hey, everything's good, I'm back, let's go. And starting to understand the healing that the family goes through and kind of how they just sit back and they're like, yeah, you're sober now, but they're kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop because it's dropped so many other times before.
Yeah.
And so I missed out on my sister's entire beginning of her life. I wasn't there when she graduated. I wasn't there when she went to prom. I wasn't there for when she started driving a car. All these milestones I had missed, and so we had no trust. I could remember always being there with her when she was a baby, but she didn't remember that.
Yeah, yeah. I had a nephew that I was around a lot during his, between the ages of like 2 and I would say 5 or 6, and then I just started declining. And then it's the same thing. I didn't want to be around. I would show up, I'd be all fucked up, and the family was just like, when he stopped looking at me the same, it was just like, oh, I just want to disappear. And
Yeah.
then to them, you become like this mythical creature, right? Like my brother who's out there, I love him, but I haven't seen him in so long. And they just have these maybe faint memories or a picture that they keep around that's how they remember you. They don't know what you're doing on your day-to-day life. And I'm sure there's some shame and guilt that kept you using because you felt like this about your family. And that becomes this fucking endless cycle that it's so hard to break, that merry-go-round that we're all on. It's like, you would steal from your family and disappoint your family, and then you would use because of that, and then you couldn't stop using because you have a habit now, and then you start disappointing your family more and more, and it just becomes just such a cycle that's so hard to get out of.
Absolutely. I remember when I had learned, my mother had told me one time that it had been so long since my sister saw me, and the last time she saw me, like, I have a bunch of tattoos, and she knew that I was in prison, and she saw on TV some of these prison shows, and so that's who she thought her brother was. And
Man.
and I remember hearing that, and that crushed my heart because I remember walking into prison and looking around and feeling in my heart like this isn't me. I wasn't raised like this. Like I don't, not that I didn't belong there, but like understanding there were people that were kind of wearing being in prison as like a badge of honor. Like they were proud they've been, they were proud to go get penitentiary ink and like all this stuff. And I just remember like I have nothing in common other than getting high. I have nothing in common with a lot of these, like most of these people.
Right.
And so for my sister to relate that to me, and that being me, and then finding out that her growing up None of her friends even knew she had a brother. She wouldn't talk about me.
Yeah, it's painful to. Could imagine it's painful to
Yeah.
share about. So then, what happens out of there? You're running through Austin for a couple of years.
Yep. Yep. Running through Austin and catch my other felonies, and I go to that's when the judge looked me in the face and he was going to send me away for 20 years. And so my lawyer said, I talked to my lawyer afterwards, and I was like, look, man, I really like to go get some help for two reasons. One, so I don't got to go kick in jail, and two, so I can at least have a little bit of time under my belt and try to reestablish communication with my family. Just so at the time they weren't talking to me, they wanted nothing to do with me until I changed my life. So just so I could try to reestablish communication with them, and just so they would write me while I'm gone. And so he said, go ahead, go get help. As long as you're in help, I can keep getting your case continued, and we'll have sentencing afterwards. So I went and I checked into the Temple VA, and I did 8 months there, and that's when I gotten in the program. I had started going to AA, and I kept a folder of all the work I had done over. I ended up staying there 8 months, and so I kept a folder of every single piece of work that I did while I was there. As I was going to AA, a lot of the people had heard my story, what was going on, and they had written me some character letters. And so after about 8 months, I went and presented that to my lawyer, and his jaw kind of dropped, and he was like, "Look, you're a combat vet. I can see that you're taking steps to change your life. So whatever you're doing, I need you to keep doing it."
Yeah.
And so I tried to go back and get back in the VA, but they had told me I had done too much time there. And so they referred me out to a state-funded place here in Austin called a New Entry. It's a very small, very modest place. Most everybody in there is like, homeless, fresh off the street. But I didn't care. I found out it was a 6-month facility, and I was looking at 20 years, and I was like, 6 months is, no problem. I'll go do it. And so that brought me back to Austin, and checked in there and just had a completely different mindset. And because when I talked to my lawyer and he said that, whatever you're doing, I need you to keep doing it, it gave me like a little bit of hope. And that was the first hope I had in so long. And so I went in there with a completely different attitude, and I went from, the person that would just kind of sit in the back and, not talk to people, to being the first guy that's going to shake your hand when you come walking through the door, and any way I can help you. Right. And the 6-month program kind of started reintegrating me back into the community. And one of the most powerful things that's ever happened to me was, I'd grown up an athlete, but now that I'd done 8 months in the VA, started to do this time here in Austin, and I just looked at myself in the mirror, and I just didn't like who I saw anymore physically. I gained a lot of weight. I was out of shape. I felt like garbage. I looked like garbage. And so I wanted to start trying to address that. So I found out about a little running group that met 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right outside of the treatment center. And I was never a runner growing up at all. I played sports, and so if I was running without a basketball in my hand or something, I was in trouble. So I was out there, doing suicides or whatever punishment they were giving me.
Yeah.
And so I showed up to that run, and I was still smoking a pack of Newports a day, and thought I was going to do it no problem. And I came in dead last place with all the people that were running. I barely could finish 2 miles, but something made me want to keep going back. And I kept going back, and for that next 6 months, I never missed one of those runs. And I had told you before, if you have time, if I could tell you a quick story.
Please, yeah, man.
Right.
We got plenty of time.
So when I discovered this running, I looked back at all the other times I tried to get sober. Over the course of all these years we're talking about, I had been in treatment about 12 times, and it was the same thing every time. And this time, I started running, and I came in contact with this amazing group of people. And anybody that lives in Austin or knows Austin, you know, you could go to Town Lake, rain or shine, you know, day or night, and there's going to be people out there running. And so I had heard about this lady in the running group, and she runs trail races. And so there was something about hearing about that just sounded cool to me. And so I went to like seek this lady out.
Can you, for people who don't know, tell them what trail races are?
All right, trail races are, so normally normally you see people run road races, road marathons, you know, 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, full marathons, stuff like that are on the road. Trail races are just runs that are happening out on the trail. So you're running, but you're navigating terrain the whole time. And so it's just a little different. You know, I ended up liking it a lot better because you're out in nature, you're away from your cell phone, you're away from people and cars and music, and it's just you and the train and the weather or whatever. So running became this very, very powerful thing in my life because it put me in with this amazing group of people, and I started running these races, and it gave me something that I was inspired by, something I was excited to wake up and go do every morning. And it since my days of playing basketball, I never had that in my life. So remember when I was telling you about how when I was getting kicked out of the military, I got sent to my first treatment center where I met that girl. Okay.
Yeah.
So as soon as I went to that treatment center, I was not there for the right reasons. I was just trying to stay out of trouble with the Army. And so I go in there, and I met this guy in the treatment center, and he reminded me a lot of myself. We were buddies in treatment, and we were both in there not for the right reasons. And so we're in there, we're talking shit, we're having fun, we're talking to girls, this and that. And that's when I made a drastic mistake, and I started dating one of the girls in the treatment center. And so I do my time there. I get out. I stay in one of the most toxic relationships I've ever been in for 2 years. And then I have to go away to prison. And so, like I was saying before, I got out of prison and I looked that girl up. Come to find out, she's with my young buddy from the treatment center. And so I started texting her, started calling her. She started sneaking around behind his back to come see me. And then he found out, so he's texting me, and I'm calling him, and I'm trying to get him to meet me, and we're gonna fight and all this grand stuff. And it was a whole mess. And so one night I had enough, and I went and I found his apartment. I showed up at his door, and I was trying to get him to come outside. And the girl, she loved the fact that there were two guys ready to fight over her. So she was kind of egging it all on. And he wouldn't come outside, and so that night she ended up leaving and coming with me. And so that was when I decided we were going to move to Temple, Texas, and I was going to go to the VA, and I was going to try to get help, and you know, life was going to be better. And so
she was actively using it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That was our bond right there. Okay. So we go to Temple that night, and I get a little motel room, and as she's unpacking her stuff, out comes a laptop, and out comes an iPad, and out comes a cell phone, and all this electronic stuff that I know is not hers. And so, like I said, this guy was my buddy, and the only problem I ever had with him was, you know, the girl. And so now I got the girl back, and so I don't care about I don't want the stuff. And stealing was not one thing I had never really got down with in my entire addiction. I never liked stealing something. I felt like it was bad juju or whatever.
Right.
So I call him up and I tell him, man, I got your stuff. You know, I had nothing to do with it getting taken. I want to give it back to you. You're more than welcome to come pick it up. And for whatever reason, he sent his mother to come pick up the stuff because he thought I was going to like set him up or something. And so a very nice woman, I give her the stuff back. That's that. And so now I want you to fast forward years later. I ended up in Austin. I ended up in this treatment center, and I start getting involved with the running world. And as I said before, running ended up being one of the most influential things to ever happen to me. It transformed and took my recovery, my mental health, my physical health to levels that I didn't know were possible for me. And so I meet this woman, and she's going to start training me up to do trail races, and I'm very interested in doing them. So over the next couple of weeks, I start training with her, and she's going to train me up for my first race. And so I'm super excited. And so we're out there almost every day running on trails all around Austin. And one day we're sitting there and we're going, and I'm pretty open about my story. And so we're kind of talking about my past, and I tell her I'm getting about when I got kicked out of, was getting kicked out of the military, and I ended up going to treatment, and I ended up getting involved with a girl in the treatment center and this and that. And at one point I said the girl's name. And when I said the girl's name, my friend stopped dead in her tracks, and she looked over at me and she goes, "Oh my God, do you know my son?" And I was like, "Who's your son?" Her son was my young buddy from the treatment center.
Oh, wow. Holy
She,
shit.
she was the mom that had come pick that stuff up off me years before.
What?
And we had no idea. And so I want you to think for a minute on how many different ways that story could have went down. You know, I could have robbed him. I could have robbed her. He and I could have fought. You know, me giving that stuff back was the one honest thing I ever did in my entire addiction for whatever reason. And I still don't know to this day. But what's the chances that, you know, 3 years I would leave this city, 3 years later, come back to a place where there's over 1 million people here and get plugged into a community and an activity that would literally change my life, you know, and it be this one woman. And so still to this day, she remains as one of my best friends. You know, I would not be where I am today without her. I spend every Thanksgiving over at their house. But
what's her name?
Her name's Penny Lane.
Penny
Like the Beatles song.
Is that a real name?
Yep, Penny Lane.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I got chills from that one. That is, I mean, there's this stuff that you hear about when it's just like you do one honest thing. You know what I mean? You could be in the middle of the most scumbaggery that your life is, but you do like one little honest deed, one little honest thing, and it like the ripple effect of it. That's insane, man. That's great. So yeah, keep going. This is you got me hooked already.
Yeah, so that, I mean, she got me involved with the trail running, and I started running these races, and she knew how to poke me competitively. And so my first race I went and I ran a 10K, and I got done with the 10K, and I was all feeling good. And you know, I was out on a trail, I think out in it's called Pedernales Falls was where I ran my first race. So I got done with my 10K, and I was all kind of feeling myself. And she looked at me and she's like, "Yeah, that's cool, but you could do more." Ooh. And so I was like, all right, I'll do more. And so I think, you know, a month later, I decided I was going to run a 30K. That's 15 point something miles. Got done with that. Same thing, was feeling myself. And she's like, "Yeah, that's cool, but you could do more." And so my next race was a 50K. And then within my first year of being sober, I had done 100K, which is 62 miles. And along the way, I ended up being kind of good at it. And so I started doing really well at races. And so when I ran that 100K, I qualified for a race called Western States. Western States are you familiar with the Boston Marathon?
Yeah.
So the Boston Marathon, you can't just go run the Boston Marathon. You have to qualify for the Boston Marathon. Right. Western States is like the Boston Marathon of 100 milers.
Okay.
And so I qualified to do that. And then along this way, you know, my story amongst the recovery world is a lot like most other people's. Getting in trouble, family stuff, drugs, you name it, mental health issues. But in the running world and amongst normies, they're not as open as we are with our stories and, you know, being vulnerable and stuff like that. So one thing led to another, and people in the running world kind of started hearing my story. And, you know, to another addict, it's nothing big, but to regular people, they're like, "Oh my God."
Yeah.
And so I had done a guy with the Austin Marathon had heard my story, and so he did an interview with me. And I did the interview, and they posted it before that year's Austin Marathon. And Lance Armstrong somehow read it. And so shortly after that, Lance Armstrong had me come on his podcast. And things just kind of started building from there. And along the way, after the podcast, I had gotten Member of the Year in that little running group I was talking about that I'd meet outside of the treatment center. And so one of the prizes of getting member of the year is they shoot a little 2-minute video on telling your story. And so met with the director. He shot that video, and it's also to market the running group. And so they shot that video, and when we posted it to social media, out of nowhere, I started getting inundated with messages, and messages literally from like across the pond, all over the world. And it was very mind blowing. And it's people that were messaging me, and some people I knew, some people I didn't, some people who had served in the military, and some were just absolute strangers that started telling me very intimate things about their childhood or stuff they had been through. And that's kind of when I started to realize the power we all have as addicts, and being open and being vulnerable and talking about our things. And I'm sure everybody listening here has been to a meeting or something where, you know, somebody shares something and it opens up a door for you and makes it okay for you to start talking about your stuff. And one thing led to another, and the director who had shot that little 2-minute video had started seeing some of the messages that were coming through. And shortly after that, I had started training for this 100-mile race called the Pinhoti 100. It's on the Appalachian Trail. It basically goes from Alabama to Georgia. And so he knew I was doing that, and he approached me. And with the amount of exposure that the video got, asked me if I'd be willing to do something on a larger scale. And he started telling me about the idea for the film, the documentary. And I mean, this, you have to understand, like, this is such a mind blowing, like, it doesn't even seem real. Like, you want to talk about imposter syndrome. Like, all I did was just kind of get my shit together and start running in a little bit. And for whatever reason, people started to take notice. So now I have some guy coming to me talking about he wants to film a movie and all this. And it's just wild still to this day. And so yeah, that's how it all happened.
You know, and like you said, you kind of lose sight of it when you're going to meetings, and you like, these stories are not uncommon, like in our circle, you know what I mean? And it's and it's just crazy that, like, you know, and not to sound cheesy, but it's like a room full of miracles. Even somebody in there on their first day who's just trying to get help, like, a room full of fucking miracles, and you just become sort of blind to it, you know. But when the rest of the world is like, this story is amazing, and you're like, me? I'm just a guy who did a lot of drugs and then stopped and did some work on myself. You know what I mean? And then, like, but then you learn that you can inspire people, and that, you know, your story is worth telling, and that, you know, just like the one good deed that you did caused this ripple effect to you to meet Penny Lane, and now look at all these things. Like, every single person who goes through something and comes out the other side and is willing to talk about it and share about it, like, the amount of people that they could help, you can't, it's unfathomable, the amount of hope that you get just when you put yourself out there a little bit. So I have to ask, is Penny Lane's son, did he ever find recovery? Is he doing okay?
He did. He's doing amazing. He's a business owner. I've been every past 5 years, I've been to every Thanksgiving over their house. We hang out every time. He's doing great.
That warms my heart, man. What a good story. Does he make it into the documentary at all?
No, he does not.
All right, so part 2 right now, I'm calling dibs on. We'll talk after the show, and we'll get the ball rolling on that one.
Let's go.
So what I do have to talk about, because you were talking about that you were a combat veteran, so I'm imagining there's some sort of PTSD there.
The VA would tell me so. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So running is I'm sure that's therapeutic for it. And do you get feedback from a lot of veterans who talk about this with you?
Quite a few. Yeah. The one common thread, unfortunately, with today's society and the VA and everything like that, is when I got out of the military and I started going and seeking mental health and stuff like that. Unfortunately, the answer many times nowadays is medicine. Yeah. And so when I originally went in there, they diagnosed me with a laundry list of things from, overall PTSD, depression, anxiety disorder, panic disorder, agoraphobia, sleep disorder, nightmares, you name it, just this laundry list of things. And they handed me 10, 12 bottles of pills. And I just remember thinking like that, this is what got me here in the first place in a way.
Yeah.
I definitely played my own part. I'm not doing that. I'm not
Yeah.
making light of that, but, and I tried doing the medication. And so through all this, I kind of started breaking my life down into 3 areas, looking at my mental health, my physical health, and my spiritual health. And so I would always try to put my eggs in one basket. And so I went the mental health route, and I did the groups and took the medicine. And for me, it just wasn't the answer. It just always felt like a Band-Aid. And I'm not trying to tell anybody not to take their medication or anything like that. There is absolutely people that, benefit and live a much better life with it. But for me, it wasn't the answer. Then I tried to go the complete spiritual route and, 12 steps, 90 meetings, 90 days, recovery, recovery, recovery. If you weren't in recovery, I wasn't talking to you. And what I found for myself was I just kind of stuck in a recovery bubble. And I never did anything to realize that the reason we get sober and the reason we have that foundation, in the 12-step world is to get back to living life and finding what we find joy in life. And so I never had addressed until the end was the physical piece of my life, and understanding that once I started the running, the mental health issues I was having with the depression, anxiety, not being able to sleep, or nightmares, a lot of that started melting away very quickly. And it just started making connections in my brain that just weren't there before. The way I started articulating my words and being able to speak to people in public, and it kind of snapped me out of this, I was like frozen in arrested development, where, I'm 30 something years old, still walking around with my hat crooked and my pants down around my ass, like talking crazy. And just, I started running. And after a while of that, I just kind of snapped out of it and was like, this is not the way a 30 something year old man carries himself. And so, all these problems with mental health started to melt away. And I started to realize that this amazing group of people I had come in contact with, in the running world, and finding something that inspired me and how that was actually feeding my spirit. And then finding other people in the recovery community or other people in general, and them wanting some of what I had, and getting them into running and watching them run races and them find the same thing, that was feeding my spirit. And so that was the medicine, that truly helped me, get sober and get over a lot of the issues I was having with PTSD.
Yeah. So what is your recovery date?
April 18th. I just had 5 years.
Congratulations, man. So if you could go back and talk to Shawn, let's say April 1st, 5 years ago, or right before, say a couple weeks before you got in, and you could have a window of what your life would be like now, do you think you would have believed it?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. I've been talking about this a lot recently. Tomorrow I'm closing on a home, my girlfriend and I. And so just trying to wrap my head around that, like owning or buying a home, like if you would have told me that April 1st, that 5 years from now I would own a home, like, you're out of your mind. Like, that was never going to be an option for me in my life. And so, go ahead.
And it's being able to show up for stuff like that, and then the mundane stuff like moving furniture, paying your bills, doing tough days, like that's the stuff that gives you the strength to do these amazing things. It's the little shit. And I always, whenever I get mad, like I just went through a move. I didn't buy a house, but me and my girlfriend just moved into, definitely an upgrade from our last one. And we moved, and we're unpacking, and we're stressed out, and we're spending a ton of money, and it's just like, these are truly gifts of recovery. You know what I mean? Yep. These problems are fucking incredible compared to what I was doing just a little bit. Like 6 years ago today, I was still out there. You know what I mean?
Right.
I was, I got 6 years coming up, and we had talked about doing the runs in South Florida, and like public bathrooms in South Florida. Like that's how big my world was. Back like 6 world. Now like here I am talking to you. We never met before, having a great conversation about how you inspire people, man. Like. Oh, just it really gives me chills, man. This is incredible, and it's the baby steps, man. Because it's like what I'm hearing in your story is you just put one foot in front of the other, literally, and then the racing story. I'm no pun intended, but
No,
and that's what it is, man. It's taking that first step, finding out what's working for you with your mental health, and going to meetings and finding that, and then doing the running thing, and all these things just add up into an incredible fucking story.
absolutely. The one thing I'm going to add to that is another thing that running did for me, and I think anybody in early sobriety, and especially people that have gotten later in sobriety that look back at their early sobriety, is the amount of insecurity that you have once you kind of step back out in the world sober.
Yeah.
When I describe it to people, as like to regular people that don't understand, it's like stepping back out into the world naked. You don't have anything protecting your body, and you just feel so vulnerable. And
Yeah.
getting out and running these races and finding something. You were talking about the little mundane things, and some of those things crush people.
Yeah.
But finding an activity or something I could do in my life that I was finding so much benefit from, but something where when I'm going out to do a trail run, there's other people running and there's other people in the race, but like it's me versus me.
Yeah.
And so doing something like, my first ultra marathon or even my first race, and coming to understand that I was capable, because I only identified as Shawn the dope fiend.
Right.
I didn't think I was anything more than that. So finding something where I could discover that I was capable of so much more than I ever thought was possible, for myself especially, that made all those mundane things and all those little problems for me, it made it seem less less likely. Like if I could do this over here, then I know I can do all this.
And you know what it is, man? Like what I see in you, and this is honestly from the heart. It's like true humility. You're not up here talking about like how you got your shit together and you need to do what I did, and I got this documentary and people want to hear what I have to say. Like you're such a humble guy, and you're just like, yeah, I was running and this happened, and they put a camera on me, and all of a sudden I got a film crew behind me, and now I got a documentary coming out this week. Like I don't understand either, and that's what it's all about, man. So big congratulations on all that stuff, man. And
Thank
now
you.
we're gonna get to rapid fire question time.
It's rapid fire question time.
That explosion means you have to think fast now, Shawn.
All right.
All right, you ready?
Yes.
How many days do you have sober?
5 years worth.
Okay, I'll give that to you. All right, who was your first celebrity crush?
Pamela Anderson.
Pamela Anderson. All right. What was the last movie that made you cry?
Uh,
I know there's lots of them. You told me earlier about your girlfriend.
I know there was.
Saying,
I'd have to. It was some war movie that got me.
okay. All right. Well, we'll have to double back around on that another time. What is your motivational song? The one song that gets you pumped and going?
Scarface, No Problems.
Oh shit. Okay. Houston. All right. And you're a pretty physically fit guy. When it's your cheat day, what's the first junk food that you go to?
Junk food, chocolate covered pretzels.
Oh, that's some good shit there. All right, man.
That's been my jam lately.
That was it for rapid fire questions, man. Thank you so much. So let's talk about the documentary, where people can see it, and what you have coming up.
So Saturday, the film has kind of done its rounds. It's been in 13, or it's been the film festivals. It's won 13 film festivals. It's won an award in almost every film festival. We've been touring around with it, kind of doing educational screenings over the past year or two. And finally now the director has a deal with, it's coming out on Amazon on Saturday. It's also going to be on like Roku and a bunch of other streaming platforms. The best thing to do is just Google it on Saturday, and it should tell you whichever one you can get it on.
Cool, and that's 100 miles to redemption. We'd love to have you maybe come out to Recovery Unplugged sometime and show it and talk to the clients there. I'm sure you'd inspire a ton of people.
We actually so currently I work for I'm executive director with Active Recovery Coaching.
Oh.
And
okay.
so we bring fitness out to treatment centers, work with clients on the individual sessions. The same thing that helped me get sober was getting plugged in with that healthy community and finding something to challenge myself and show me I was capable for is now in a weird way like what I get to do for work every day. And so we actually come to Recovery Unplugged, the inpatient, on Saturdays.
Well, there we go. It's already done.
So
Perfect.
no excuses. I'm coming out there.
All right, man. Well, we didn't even get to talk about what you're doing now with your recovery coach, and so you're gonna have to come back soon.
All
That's
right.
it's settled, and then we're gonna work on the documentary between you, Penny Lane, and her son, and then get that going.
All right.
All right, you heard it here first, folks. So, Shawn, man, thank you so much. This has been incredible. Best hour of my week by far. Love to have you back. And for everybody watching, thank you for tuning in. Tune in again next week, and definitely check out 100 Miles to Redemption this Saturday on Amazon, or just Google it, stream it, check this guy out. He's an inspiration. And Joseph will be back next week. And as Joseph always likes to say, there's 1,000 ways in and 1,000 ways out, and we hope you find your way. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.